Awesome. All right, I'm going to keep going. So this next part really came about because I attended a session at the annual convening with Josefina and Joel, and they were talking about your organization's readiness for partnering for grant funding. And it got me really thinking about, especially in the last couple months or last month, what are some tips and tricks and things that our IPPs should be thinking about in order to be able to ready, set, go, right? To apply to that potential opportunity for funds or resources that might become available, right? Given what we've been sort of managing over the last month. So a few questions here is, how is your organization ready to apply for funding? When new funding aligns with your organization's area of interest, is your team ready to go? Are your documents ready to go? These opportunities, as we all know, often come with very short deadlines and very specific requests. And I think this was related to Rachel's comment earlier. So we focused on 6 sort of general areas around tips for preparation for organizing for funding. So the other thing I want to mention is that our team intends to put these tips into a separate handout for you and to send them to you. I also, as I go through them, if there are other things that you can think of related to each of the areas of preparation, please don't hesitate to write it down, put it in the chat, whatever it may be. Because I think that there's probably things that we haven't thought of that could be added to this list. So in the area of organizational foundational work, is your mission statement ready to go? Are your value statements, your goals, all of those types of things, are they written somewhere? Have they been refreshed in the last 20 years? Are they ready to go in the event that they're being asked for? Do you have a clearly defined population of focus that you are working with or that you want to work with? And I know this sounds like a very silly tip, but sometimes we have to say no, that particular funding source and proposal is not in our domain because they're working with a completely different population, and the amount of entity and effort that it would create for us to work with that population is not something that we can carry. The other question is not just about like defined population related to age, but also like race and ethnicity, right? Do you specifically just serve one race and ethnic group, and that needs to be what you are going to focus on, or have you been variable, right? And then what area, right? Is it county based? Is it multiple counties? Those types of things. And one of the things that I think is important about this is that I am no longer surprised at how frequently when we speak to some of our IPPs, because of a state of transition that they're in, that even among their team, there is confusion about exactly who they're focused on in terms of looking for additional funding sources. So again, just are you spending time as an organization talking through these things? Budgetary matters. Is your financial house in order? Are you in a state of flux? Do you have clear compensation for your employees? Is there clarity on exactly how much they get paid per hour, exactly what the benefits are, all of those types of things? Do you have clarity on anticipated and unanticipated expenses that may be coming? And then also, one of the things we do know that makes an organization attractive to a funding agency or a funding source is the diversification of their current funding stream. And that is very simple. It's because organizations and entities want to know that your success as an organization is not solely reliant on their singularly funding you. So they want to know that you have a diversified profile. Board of directors and community advisory boards. Do you have clear, are your board of directors full currently? Do they have clear leadership seats? Have they been assigned? are not assigned? Have they been elected, appointed, whatever your processes might be? Do you have bylaws for them? Do you have bios on all of your board of directors and community advisory boards? I was having a conversation recently with an IPP that said, we probably should start asking for updates to bios of our board of directors or community advisory board, every year, right? That should just be a part of our normal process, because you all know that when it's go time, right? So, and board of directors can sometimes have, 8 to 10 people on them. So managing and tracking down all of those people can be a big challenge in terms of timing. And evidence of inclusion. Do you have evidence of including your board of directors and your community advisory board in the work that you do? This is also something that we know that is very attractive to funders, is they want to know, what is your process? What is your governing process of how much your board of directors and community advisory board provides input into the implementation of the work that you do? So do you have minutes? Do you have agendas? Can you specifically articulate how that's being done? Sometimes minutes and agendas always don't get written up or don't get written up. So just thinking about those types of things. Organizational capacity. Do you have updated resumes and CVs for all of your staff? Do you have updated staff bios? Again, this was in the same conversation. Maybe this is something that can be done yearly or something where it's just a normal process so that when it's time to go, you're ready to go. FTE stands for full-time equivalent employee. What percentage are your current staff in terms of their full-time equivalency, in terms of if they're a full-time employee? This is important because although you may be seeking other funding sources for sustainability, if your staff are already at one full FTE and at 100% maxed out, maybe it's more of a matter of adjusting the way that the funds are being spread across your staff or the types of duties and things that they're doing than it is necessarily putting an additional sort of workload on them. So, these again are just things and conversations you should be thinking about, right? Where is the capacity in there? Grant writing skills. Always important to assure that somebody on your team is going to a training on grant writing skills or receiving some extracurricular training on, how to write really good goals and objectives, how to write towards different funders, understanding how to do a Gantt chart, all these little things that often come as a part of writing a proposal. And then the evaluation capacity. One of the main reasons why, this initiative was created is to assuring, again, that you're being mindful about your staff, understanding the importance of and valuing the importance of continuing to do evaluation so that when you are applying for funding, you can show and demonstrate the impact that you've had on your participants, as well as tell the stories of that impact. Data. Are your staff knowledgeable about your program data and the types of data that you are collecting, as well as the types of results that you have had from the various components of the work that you've done? That data does not belong with your local evaluation consultant. That data belongs to your organization. And so the staff really should be mindful of what exists. What does the data say? I know a couple organizations in our hub that have data parties where everybody sits around and talks about data. And those types of things are important because you may pull and rely on one of your staff to help support you with writing a proposal. They need to be able to understand that information. Data related to not just a particular program, but your organizational data and data that's been collected about your organization. And I already went into this, but the culture of a commitment to evaluation, regardless of whether or not a funder is asking you to do evaluation really should just be a part of any type of work that you do, because that funder may not ask you for a very rigorous evaluation process like was asked for CRDP, but that funder is going to want to know how you show that you've reached the outcomes, the goals and objectives that you set for them. So thinking about it right up front is really important. Strengths of your work. So oftentimes what I hear from funders is that they don't really want to know about necessarily, you know, always just you know, the outcome data that you got or the qualitative quotes that you know, experiences of your participant. They also want to know and this is what happened, right? And this is how we took that data and strengthened our work as an organization. So making sure that you're thinking about how you're using data to inform the way that you strengthen the work that you do. Knowledge and data in and about your community. This is what I was referring to earlier. Telling a funder that you're able to attach the work that you're doing in your program to a community need that is larger than you, that is bigger than your organization, is really what it's about. And so if you haven't spent a lot of time, if none of your team members really spend time thinking about community data that the county collects or the hospitals collect, I really want to encourage you to start to do that. Team cohesion, clarity of work. Sometimes we just are doing so much, right, that we forget who's in charge of what and how many and who's responsible for what. So assuring that you are clear about those roles, spending time being mindful of knowing who's doing what, writing those things down, being really clear about work profiles for each type of employer, each type of role, is also important. And the reason why it's important when you're applying for funding and for sustainability is because you want to be able to say, oh, this particular scope or component of this particular work that we're applying for would most likely fall into so-and-so's duties, right? Or so-and-so's scope of work. So if you're so busy right now serving the needs of the community and not really being intentional about that, taking that time, it can really affect your ability to communicate that. Focus of the organization. So again, this is just being able to describe both of what you do as individuals, but also do as an organization. And also I'll say, you know, spending time talking about you as an organization are in the business of blank. I remember one time when I was in grad school, I worked under a mentor, and she told me all the time that she was in the business of doing sexually transmitted infection disease research and program implementation in what was San Bernardino County, California, or still is, but back in my olden days. And then all of a sudden one day she told me that we were going to do teen pregnancy prevention work. And I was like, what's going on? And essentially the lesson that I learned is that essentially the CDC had changed its priorities and was focusing on something else. You know, when you're a single entity, you can pivot in that way, but as an organization, it's obviously much more difficult. So having conversation as an organization on how much of that pivot you can actually engage in. And that's where I say flexibility in design, but don't be too flexible because you might find yourself doing something completely different. Partnerships, making sure you have established strong positive relationships with partner organizations. This obviously doesn't happen overnight. This is something you have to sustain. But again, I know it's really challenging in terms of workload, but this is really something that you can leverage when you have a moment when you need a letter of support, when you need someone's to tap into someone's network that maybe a partner organization has or a partner has. So spending time nourishing those things will go a long way. Again, obviously, strong network connections. I think more than anything, we can see right now this month the importance of this network that we all have in CRDP and the work that's been done in terms of advocacy and the importance of it. And I would say that, you know, as a single organization in a community, you should still use that frame of mind, right? Of networking in your community, making sure that your reach becomes larger, because it's not who you know, but it's who they know, and then who they know and who they know that can help you with that. I also put letter of support. I mentioned it earlier, but letters of support templates. So when you ask a partner or an organization for a letter of support, let's say for something that you're applying for, ask them if you can write it for them or include the major components, and they can fill certain things in. This can make things very, very easy. There's a lot of templates out there for you to use. And the last thing is relationship building, not just with your partners, but with funder organizations or funding organizations. So the people behind those funding organizations, they're people, right? Just like you, just like me, just like Catherine, they're people. And so I hear this all the time from funders, like we want them to reach out. We want them to ask us questions. We want to understand them as an organization before they even apply. Don't hesitate to create those connections, to make those connections, and to sustain those connections, so that when those new funding opportunities become available, you might be one of the first people to know, or at least you have someone that you can talk to regarding what is this organization or what is this funding source really looking for in a particular fundee. And then we already talked about focusing on funder goals. Okay, so that is all I have about that. I know that was a lot. I wanted to take a second if we have time. I think it's 3:57, so I know we're pushing up close to time. I think the first question is there anything you would add to that list of things to prepare for potential funding?
We have one in the chat, Heather, from Andrew, who says justification, documentation for overhead rates and indirect rates.